Hey guys! I hope that you guys are doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Boom Shikha and I welcome you to my channel. As always, I'm so grateful that you guys are listening, subscribing, and commenting. I appreciate the support. And if you want to support me further, you can do that by going to my Patreon or Ko-fi link. They're in the description below. In this video, I wanted to kind of continue on talking a little bit about that book, The Body Keeps the Score, that I've been reading recently. I finished it yesterday. And one of the things that he says in the book that really spoke to me, that actually really hurt me in a way, was hurt people hurt others. You would imagine that, if you were abused as a child, or you were hit as a child, or you were emotionally, physically, whatever, abused as a child, or there was incest in your childhood, or anything negative like that, you would imagine that you wouldn't want to repeat that pattern with your children or with the people around you. But from what I read in the book and from what his experience has been, because he's dealt with a lot of trauma patients and abuse victims, he noticed that the pattern repeats itself over and over and over again until someone consciously decides that they're not going to do it anymore. And that's very rare, unless they actually have gone through therapy and they've really dealt with the issues that they had or the trauma that they had in their childhood. That really upset me in a way. Actually, I sat with it for a while thinking, why and how can this be possible? I mean, just thinking about it, for me, I know that I have repeated this pattern myself as well, and that's why I'm really upset about it. Not because I'm saying that I'm not doing it, I'm saying that I think I do it as well. I think that I have repeated the pattern of the negative associations I had in my childhood into my adulthood as well, and into my relationships. That's one of the reasons why I'm not going into a relationship right now and really trying to consciously think about it before I go back into one, because I really don't want to repeat the patterns that I noticed in my childhood. So I'll give you an example, obviously. One of the things that happened a lot in my childhood was my parents would fight over money a lot. And I think that's pretty common. I think that's one of the main things that people fight about in relationships. They fight about money, and they fight about feeling insecure with each other. And so obviously my parents fought a lot about that, and it was obviously, at points it was physically violent, and there was a lot of mediation that I had to do between them. They would stop talking to each other, they would sulk in the corner, and I would have to go to each other of them and make sure that they're eating and make sure that they're not that it doesn't deteriorate further. And so I spent a lot of my time dealing with that in my childhood. There's other things as well that happen, obviously, but this is what I'm going to focus on in this video. So obviously, a lot of fights over money. And I noticed that, I was like, I'm never going to fight over money with my partner. I told myself this over and over again. I'm never going to do it. It's a stupid thing. I've noticed it all my childhood. It's dumb to fight over money. I can't believe people actually do that. I told myself all these things, obviously. And of course, you should never say never, because as soon as I got into my first real relationship, I noticed that that was the first thing that we fought about, was money. We were living together at the time, and we were saving up for a trip, a big trip, a long trip, about 10 months long. And my insecurities about money kept on popping up, and also I started repeating the freaking pattern that I noticed, where I assumed that instead of talking about it and being like, I feel insecure about money, can you help me? Instead of saying, I feel insecure about the money that we've saved up, I don't think it's going to be enough, I think we're going to be in trouble when we are on the trip, etc., etc. Instead of saying those things out loud, I started fighting with him about the fact that he's not working hard enough, and same things that my parents would fight about. That he's not working hard enough, or he's wasting his money on nonsense, or things like that. And then we fought, and of course this created a distance between us, and it was just generally not great. Of course, now I can look back in hindsight and be like, I can't believe I actually did the same thing that I'm doing the same things that my parents did in relationships, in their relationship. I repeated it in my relationship after eons of telling myself, I'm not gonna do that when I get into a relationship. I'm never gonna do it. It's so funny. Now, of course, that's like a minor, I think it's a little bit minor situation, but I think it's a little bit more poignant or a little bit more scary when you've been abused as a child, or you've had that kind of assault or kind of thing, and you do that to your own children. I think that really freaks me out, because not that I was abused in that way, but I was emotionally, and I had to deal with a lot of emotional abuse. But I can imagine that I would, because if you're not conscious and if you're not aware of it and not actually consciously thinking about, okay, I'm not going to do this, and even then you can falter and fail. If you consciously go into a relationship saying, okay, this is how I want to communicate, and you learn patterns of communication that are positive rather than negative. You don't put the other person as an enemy, and you don't fight against them as if you're fighting for your life. There's a lot of different things you can do. Unless you do all those things, it's very probable that you're going to end up doing the same things or repeating the same patterns as what happened in your childhood, which is actually really scary if you think about it. But it's true. Hurt people hurt others. People are not fighting with each other or berating each other or calling each other names or physically being violent with each other not because they like it. I'm guessing they don't like it. It's because there's something hurt inside of them, that hurt child from their own childhood abuse or from their own trauma that they're carrying around with them. And that hurt child or part of them is basically trying to reach out to someone, but they don't know how to do it. They don't have the language for it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm always constantly telling you guys that communication is one of the skills that you really freaking have to develop right now, as much as possible, as soon as possible. Because language is the way that you're going to communicate with that person, telling them what your needs are, or what your desires are, or what you need from them. But if we don't have the language, and if you have had a childhood where you've had to deal with a lot of this random stuff, a lot of this abuse and trauma, you probably don't have the language because you haven't been taught the language. Most people don't get taught that language. In fact, I think I would say 1% of the population actually knows that language. Most people have no idea how to communicate their needs, feelings, desires to another human being. And so if you don't have the language to communicate what your needs are, obviously you're going to lash out in different ways, because that's how you are taught from your childhood. That's how I was taught, that if you feel insecure about money, start fighting about it. That was a pattern that was kind of ingrained in me. And so I was like, all right, cool, yeah, I feel insecure about money. Let's fight about it. Let me get into his face and let me fight about it with him, and then create distance and of course feel worse after about it. And repeat the pattern over and over again. So unless we have a language for it, unless we actually learn to communicate our feelings, needs, desires to the other person in a way that doesn't seem like threatening or criticism, but just positive feedback, unless we do that, there is no way for us to stop repeating that pattern. And that's one of the main things that he says in the book as well, is to learn the language, or have the language that you can use in order to communicate what your deeper needs, feelings, desires are, rather than just lashing out based on that hurt part of you, right? I would obviously, as I said in my last video, please do read the book if you do have a chance. As I said, every single person on this planet should read the book, on top of meditating and doing all the other stuff. But I do think that it's the stuff that he talked about in that book really opened my eyes up to a lot of different things that I actually went through as well. And how as I said, the physical body itself completely changes. Your neurons change, your neuropeptides change. Everything in your body changes because of the stuff that you've dealt with in your childhood. And the stats that he gave about how many percentages of people, 22% of women and 10% of men deal with sexual abuse in their childhood. And other stats that he shared in the book, it just really boggled my mind. I used to imagine it was a very uncommon thing, but it's more common than you'd actually realize. So again, do read the book, but also do realize that when that person in front of you is hurting you in some way, I'm not saying that it's a good thing or the right thing for them to do, but also try, I guess, to have a little bit of compassion and to realize they're doing it because they don't have the language to communicate with you, and they're doing it because they don't know how else to deal with that situation. That's how they've been taught. That's what the pattern was established in their childhood. That's how their parents did it or their grandparents did it. My grandparents fought about money all the time too. And so this pattern has been established for 3 generations now. And of course, that my goal with it is to stop the pattern and stop this cycle and hopefully not repeat it over and over again. And so, yeah, so to have compassion with that person in front of you. They're just repeating patterns that have been placed within them. They're not necessarily trying to hurt you. They might end up hurting you, of course. I'm not saying that they won't. But maybe that compassion will kind of lead to a different outcome rather than just you fighting with each other and then growing distant and perhaps breaking up or not being friends anymore. Or maybe it'll be the same thing, who knows. But at least there'll be a different way for you to approach the situation. I hope this makes sense. I know I've talked about a bunch of different things in this video, but I really wanted to share it with you. It just made me feel so sad inside and so much pain that I just wanted to share this with you. Hopefully it helps a little bit, tiny little bit. And if you guys have any questions, obviously, please message me or comment below. And I shall obviously try to answer your questions. I'm not an expert, obviously, in any shape or form. But I'm just kind of sharing my ideas with you guys. If you guys are interested in supporting me further, you can do that by going to my Ko-fi link. The link is in the description below. And again, thank you for being there for me. I shall see you guys the next time around. Bye for now.